I hope you all enjoy what we've got lined up for you. Thanks a lot.
Hello, so I'm Caroline. I work in sort of finance projects, and I dabble a little bit in the treasury side of things, which we'll go into a little bit later. And
I'm Julie. I work mostly on forecasting and analysis, and well, we've been here just over a year now, I think, both of us. But for context, we were like the third and fourth people to join the Monzo finance team, and we're now a team of like almost 15. Yeah. So feel like old timers already.
In the context of Monzo scale, anyway. So just quickly, a show of hands. How many people here work in finance? Okay, not too many of you, that's good. Keep your hands up if you work in finance in either a startup or a fintech. Ooh, okay, great. So for the rest of you, we're currently hiring. Go to our website. We currently have 3 roles live. There may be more coming up. We'd love to have you on board. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is who we are, how finance at Monzo does things a little bit differently, our Q4 goals and our mission, what we've been focusing on this past year, what we've got coming up, and then we'll answer, hopefully, a few of your easy questions. Don't be too mean to us, please. Okay, so a quick intro into who's who. So you've got Julie and I at the top left there. And this is the rest of our finance team. Is there anything about this team that looks slightly unusual to maybe a traditional type of finance team? Young, okay, that's great, thanks very much. Turning 30 next year, but that's fantastic, thank you. What did somebody else say there? Software engineers, exactly. So we have 2 software engineers and 1 data scientist, soon to be 2 data scientists, on the team, which is probably slightly unusual compared to most of your traditional finance teams. It's probably not so unusual in other fintechs, but this is what we feel really differentiates Monzo Finance. They're not just people that we work with sometimes, they're actually on our team. So they sit next to us, they report into the CFO, and they're working towards the same goals that we are. So this means that there's kind of like no us and them that some of you might have experienced in your workplace. And that's because we're a multidiscipline team. So we've got the accounting and the treasury and the forecasting and reporting, but we also have the engineering and the data science and analysis side. So how does this help us on a day-to-day business? So as you're probably aware, a more diverse team helps to make better decisions. You've got more backgrounds in the room, more points of view that are coming from different places, different educations, that helps make better decisions. Also creates sort of a more personal investment in collaborative projects. So that's because we're all working and have the same team goals, because we're all part of the finance team. It improves communication and collaboration around the business. So whenever there's a technical decision being made, finance are in the room. And whenever there's a finance decision made, the technical people are in the room. And finally, when you combine this with our culture of transparency, which I'm sure you've all heard lots about, it really helps to foster sort of a trust environment, and it helps to make the processes to launch products, for example, a lot more efficient and a lot more collaborative. Next slide. I'll just give you a second to read this quote. So Trevor McKendrick founded a Spanish language Bible app as an atheist. He sold it, and he now works in finance, VP of Finance at the Lander School. He writes a very entertaining newsletter that I'd recommend. It's called How It Actually Works, which explains lots of things about how things work in finance and outside of finance in the world of tech. And we probably can't really be described as a startup anymore, but this very accurately describes the activities that Julie and I have been doing this last year. So everything from paying invoices to expenses to sitting around and strategizing over what's going to happen over the next couple of years at Monzo, which is part of the reason why we love our jobs. Okay, so the mission, you know this. Monzo makes money work for everyone. The way we like to think about the finance team is that what Monzo does for you, we as a finance team try to do for Monzo. So Monzo helps you to manage your money. It helps be transparent about banking, And we're trying to push the industry to change its behavior so that the whole industry is more transparent about banking. So instead of wages coming into our account, we have investor money and we have your hard-earned cash that we need to look after. Transparency through the business is treated as the norm, not the exception. And we're constantly trying to improve the way that we do things. So we're constantly trying to find the best way of doing things. And that can be from running a small project, or it can be from running a team. So the setup of our current team is sort of work in progress at the moment, and we iterate as we go to the best way to manage that type of interaction. Okay, so our Q4 goals. Number one, this is more than just sort of identifying a process and automating it, although there is a lot of that because we've scaled quite quickly. The aim here is to change the way that we work to avoid ever having to introduce that process in the first place. So getting around the table really early on with product and making sure that we can do everything we can to help develop that process in the most efficient way. So number two is sort of our bread and butter, and it's making sure that as we grow as a business, that we still continue to operate responsibly. Okay, so number three, this is very close to my heart because we're currently running a project to upgrade our accounting system. And the idea of that is to have a sort of a single source of data. And that means that within the Monzo ecosystem, you can just have one entry point, and all the people that need to know about that piece of data should know about that piece of data. And essentially, this will help us do real live financial reporting and crucially, analysis. And number four, this means that basically, the more we can put our balance sheet to work, the more that we can return to not only you as customers, but also to our investors. Okay, so now over to Julie.
So for anyone that's followed Monzo for more than a month, you might have heard our CEO, Tom Blomfield, kind of ramble on about this thing called customer unit economics. Put your hand up if you know what that is, or if you could take a guess. Okay, cool. So essentially, what is customer unit economics? Different companies might call it different things, marginal profitability, or I don't know, various variable cost, variable revenue. But essentially what it comes down to is what is the net profit or loss that we make from serving each additional customer. And so what actually gets included in unit economics? If we're thinking about each customer that we get, and when they come through the door, what are all the additional revenues that we earn from them? And also, what are all the costs that we incur to service this customer or to like maintain your bank account for you? What's not included, for our definition anyways, is one-time onboarding costs. So as an example, when you sign up as a customer, you go through all the security checks, like you take a photo of your passport or your driver's license and your video. You only do that once in your customer life cycle. So for the purposes of our unit economics, we don't include that one-time cost, but we will include ongoing things. So like, for example, I'll go to the next slide. This is sort of a short list of our unit economics. And in the spirit of transparency, I'm just going to give you like pretty much real numbers here. So unit economics revenue, we offer overdrafts. And so that's the 50p a day that we offer. So we make about £7 a year on that on average across each customer. Point of sale interchange is essentially, I kind of think of it as, I don't know how many of you know about payment schemes, MasterCard and so forth, but for every time you spend and use your card at a shop or a merchant, Monzo basically earns a little bit of commission off of your transaction spend, and that's something that happens across all banks. It's something that MasterCard and Visa issue essentially, so it's not specific to us. Deposit interest, so all your customer deposits that you place with us, we place it at the central bank, and at the moment we're earning 0.75% interest on that, and other miscellaneous bits of revenue. So all these things are, as you place cash with us and as you use your card, we kind of generate revenue off of that we get to keep. On the flip side, we've got the expenses. So what are all the things that we have to spend money on in order to provide you with this service or this product? So at the moment, one of our largest costs is the customer operations. So some of you probably know we run 24/7 customer operations that you can talk to through your app. And so that costs us about £8.50 a year on average. We have lending costs, so the cost of doing credit checks and just doing like monthly checks on customers, making sure that everybody is still a viable customer and sort of not bankrupt or anything, hopefully. We also have the MasterCard fees and just miscellaneous other stuff. Unfortunately, we are a bank, so we do suffer from fraud losses and things like that. So really great news is one of the biggest challenges of this past year is that with any company, when you're first starting off and making product and sort of testing, reiterating on it, you tend to make losses on the product because you're sort of experimenting, seeing how it works, finding the right pricing point. So this last year, we've kind of trudged really hard to go from, we started the year, I think, on like a negative £40, essentially, negative £50 loss per year on each customer. And we're pretty much at the point where we're basically breaking even now, which is really amazing. And so thank you. Yeah. And thanks to all the Monzo noughts that helped make that happen. And why is this important? So I know we talk a lot about profitability, and it's not to sound like greedy or like a traditional bank or anything, but it is important because it proves to us and to the industry that our product is worthwhile. We do make money off of you using your card and placing deposits with us. And if you do that, it shows that you trust the product, you enjoy it, you use it every day. And that obviously then leads to things like the fact that if we make money, we'll be more sustainable as a company. And also, well, this middle point is just that growth won't kill us. So if we had stayed as we were before and just made a loss on every customer and we decided to grow 1 million, 2 million, 3 million customers, we would just keep digging a bigger and bigger hole for ourselves. And yeah, then we wouldn't know what we would do in a few years' time. So next.
Yeah, okay, so these are our company Q4 goals, and probably beyond. We'll probably be focusing on these for the next year. One is really self-explanatory. It's probably really never left the table in terms of a Monzo goal. We want more people like you, and we actually also want people that aren't like you. We want to be able to cater for everybody. Number two, crucially for CUE, now that we've sort of nailed that, is growing our revenue. So that would involve launching new products to you. And for any accountants that are in the room, they know that cash is king to keeping a sustainable business, or queen, if you're that way inclined. Number three, deepen our primary account relationship. So that's about really making sure that we connect with you as customers, giving you all the financial products or tools that you need to make your financial lives or managing your finances a lot easier. We want you to use us every single day as your main account, and we want to kind of dispel our previous image as just this prepaid travel card. And number four is about controlling costs. So controlling hiring, which is probably one of our biggest costs, to make sure that we can cater for all of the customers that are growing and all the products that we're going to be launching. So this is making sure that we hire for the right roles. So making sure that we have people that are here for the long run, but we don't burden ourselves up with fixed costs and hiring the wrong sorts of people. So growth in everything, essentially. Users, revenues, features, products, but not costs. Okay.
Cool. So this is slightly a little bit of the educational side, although I think a lot of you work in finance, so hopefully this makes sense to most people. But what is company profitability? Essentially, it's when your net income is greater than zero, and what that means is you make more money than you spend. Always a good thing, even as an individual. So why is profitability important? So going back to what we kind of alluded to earlier, it is so we can be self-sustaining. So we are in this for the long run. You might have had our old mission, which is to like make money work for 1 billion people. And obviously that doesn't work if we're just focused on the UK market. We're here to kind of try to take over the world. It's a bit of an ambitious company. But in order to get there, we do need to be profitable so that we can essentially reinvest those profits back into the company. We can expand globally, hopefully. We can offer more products and just do better and nicer things for everybody. And secondly, I mean, we have relied on a lot of people to invest in us, and that includes just possibly some of you. Is anyone here a Crowdcube investor? Yes, amazing, thank you. So some of you have invested in us as an individual over the past, and you might have known there might be rumors of that happening in the future, but essentially, in the long run, you've fully invested so that you could get something back as an individual and profit from your investment. So the earlier we profit, the earlier that we can give something back to all those people that believed in us when we first started. And what would happen if we don't become profitable? So sad face. We obviously can't achieve our mission. We won't be able to make money work for everyone. And yeah, end of days. Apocalypse. Okay. And so what are our plans to make this happen? So as we talked about earlier with our company goals, sort of a short-term focus, we want to grow our lending book. So right now we do offer overdrafts, and we're working very hard on offering installment loans essentially. So we're sort of testing and trialing the product. We'll hopefully get that out to everybody fairly soon. And secondly, like we said, deepening Monzo as your primary account. So if you use Monzo every day and it's where you put your money, it's what you spend, that's amazing. And if you don't, we'd really like to know why, what's stopping you, like what is it about the product that is just not as convenient or not as user-friendly, or do you just feel trapped by your old bank for some reason? And the second point is managing the expenses. So again, it's not about sort of cutting off and like being territorial or anything about the costs, but just making sure we spend money wisely. So every time we spend money, is this going to bring something back to us? So like when we talk about hiring, for example, it's not just blindly hiring lots of people because they're nice and friendly. It's like we have to be clever about if we're hiring the right people at the right roles who can help move Monzo forward. So yeah, that is it.
Yeah, that's it from us. Does anybody have any questions? Good start. We've got a few hands. Who's good at catching?
Three. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it works. I'm Michael. I used to be aboard since Monzo. I think it's very easy. No, yeah. To have a marketplace.
Why don't you try this one?
Thank you. If you're planning to have a marketplace for other services, which are more connected to everyday life, like travel or stuff like that.
Maybe I'll give this back to Naji. Yeah, we absolutely are planning on do that. We've talked quite publicly a lot about that in the past. It's still one of our aims. We have trialed a few products with a few different partners. We're still trialing a few products and making sure that the relationships that we form with those third parties work for our customers, and we're not just selling products for the sake of selling products. I think a lot of the talk around marketplace was related to our old mission around a financial control center. I think what's important that we get base right is forming our current account and making sure that that works for everyone, and then we'll be launching more partnerships, but it is definitely something we're still working on. Do you want to add? Have we got another microphone, Naji?
Yeah.
Oh,
He's here.
he's in the corner.
It should work. Yeah.
Great. Who's next?
Thank you. I wanted to ask around the point around differentiation. You see, like, so for example, you've got, even though Goldman's an investment bank, they've launched Marcus. I think when you actually look at what they're doing in the US in terms of, there's a mobile app there and they're going to bring that into the UK. For a player like Monzo, in the future to differentiate yourself from other players coming into the market, especially if they have brand prestige, etc.
So I think the key here is we're not trying to prevent anybody else coming from the market. I think that would be anti-competitive, and it would also not be good for customers. It's important that customers have a variety in all the types of products that they use, whether that be banking or anything else. I think what's important here is that we make sure that our customer base is satisfied. We're never going to be able to make everybody happy, as much as we would like to have a hugely diverse population of users. There are some people that may just never transfer to us, and that's okay. They'll be serviced by other products. I think the key is making sure that our current customers are happy and making sure that we have a sustainable product that we can launch to other people that are interested in it.
I was just going to add, we do get that question a lot, how do you view your competitors? And the assumption is your competitors are only Revolut and Starling. And I was saying, I think if you take all of the challenger banks, still only something like 10 or 15% of the UK even know what a challenger bank is. So I would say our competitors are not really other challenger banks. It's just sort of like the legacy institutional banks who are just really stuck in their ways. And you're all here for a reason, and you're not at a Barclays open office, for example. So I think even just the group of us challenging the way the existing banking industry works and trying to move things forward so that in the long run, every customer has a better deal is more important to us than just fighting it out with other challenger banks.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually alludes to one of the points that I made earlier, that we're challenging transparency in the industry, and we're trying to make the banking industry a lot more honest. So if we do that in some way for some traditional bank or some of our competitors, then we're doing a good thing. Like an overdraft. It services a use for some people, yeah. Yes.
2 questions. So the first, presumably the customer in your CUE is the customers who have Monzo as their main current account. Is that correct?
It's just Monzo customers in general.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I almost have 3 questions. Secondly, what was the rationale behind the pricing of the cost of your overdraft for your customers?
So I think there was a lot of research done probably just a little bit before we started.
Mm-hmm.
But generally in the UK, your overdraft will be some percentage of some number, right? It might be APR, AIR, who knows what these acronyms mean. Yeah. So really when you take an overdraft, how do you know what your fee is going to be at the end of the month when your bank charges you? And I think that's a problem overdrafts are so prevalent in the UK. It's something that is quite an issue for a lot of customers. So when we did the research, it was really evident that using an interest-based fee was just not easy to understand or fair to customers. And a lot of people would like a flat fee so that you can count at the end of the day, I've used my overdraft 10 days this month. I know I'm going to be charged 50p a day, that's £5, and I just know that, and I don't have to guess or make sure there's enough money, or I'm 1p less short in my account that throws me into overdraft again the next day. Yeah.
So leading on from that, the overdraft is easier to understand on the surface, but it makes the less competitive. So are you going to revisit that, or just kind of leave it there?
The pricing specifically?
Yes.
Yeah. I think generally it would probably be up for debate along the way anyways. It's not something we're super focused on right now in terms of the pricing itself as much as we are focused on the product. I'd say that, if you are only taking £25 overdraft and you're paying 50p a day, it's probably not worthwhile. And so therefore you do have choice to still use another bank if that's better for you. I think it's just overwhelmingly the feedback has been quite positive because it is so much easier and to calculate and understand where you stand financially. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say as standard, Monzo is sort of constantly reviewing and iterating products, and pricing is always one element of that.
Hello, thank you. It sounds like you have a lot of grown-up company problems, which is it. How does finance enable Monzo to keep operating with the momentum of a startup?
That's a good question. So part of that is that single source of data that I was talking about earlier, and really making all the requirements of being a grown-up company be as efficient as possible. Another element to that is the transparency. So making sure that everybody in the company knows exactly what those requirements are, that we have a duty to report to the PRA and the FCA and to the Bank of England and to you, and we have auditors and we have other regulators, and that we are bound by all these regulations and reporting requirements, and that is everybody's problem. And it's also everybody's responsibility, and they should take that responsibility seriously because it helps everybody be transparent in the industry. We're not trying to hide anything, and that includes everything in our financial statements. It includes everything in our reporting. We just want to operate as honestly as possible. And that is something, because of this focus on transparency, that is felt throughout the business. Sorry, I don't know where the catch box is. I know you're straight in front of my face. Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So my question is about interest on pots. I've been a Monzo customer for quite a while, and it's probably the thing that's going to make me switch from my rate to Monzo as my main one. So when is that going to happen? What's the rate going to be? And how does that fit into making the customer economy unit that you were talking about?
Okay, so from the product life cycle type of thing, most of you know that we trial products with a small cohort of users. We see how it works, we see what the behavior is like, and then we roll it out to everybody, usually in a controlled fashion. We're doing that at the moment with pots and interest. So watch this space. I probably can't reveal any more than that. A few other of you in the room might know a little bit more about what I'm talking about. But they were all selected randomly.
Yeah.
Hi.
You mentioned a single point of truth. What?
So I definitely can't answer the technical question from that. For those of you that couldn't hear, that question was, what's the tech stack that we're using to create a single source of data? I don't know, we'll have to ask one of the engineers in the finance team. I can get back to you on that. And how are we going to make it work? Because, sorry, what's your name? Alex doesn't know a single large corporate that makes it work. Luckily, Alex, we are not large corporate yet. Also, we have very talented engineers that have built our entire Monzo backend unit, which means that any third party that we try and introduce into the system, we always make sure that it talks to everything else. It's also work in progress. We're not there yet. Okay, you're closest to me.
I was just going to ask how you're getting on with getting customers to switch to full Monzo. What the kind of proportion is against regular customers?
I don't actually know the stats off the top of my head. Do you know this?
So we're hitting about 25-30% of how we define it. We define salary users essentially as if you deposit more than £1,000 into your account every month. So yeah, there's lots of things that, there's a few kind of what we call like product squads, I guess. Each squad's maybe like 5 to 10 people, but essentially working on things that help make you want to use your account more. And yeah, there'll also be like growth squads that will try to experiment with different things. So we've got a few things in trial and we'll have to see what sticks. And a part of it is always just getting feedback back. So like I said earlier, if you don't like it, if something's not working for you, then it's really important to let us know. And, you know, obviously we then collate all this feedback and try to prioritize. Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. So I mean, we started the year with like nothing because current accounts have only been out for less than a year. So 0 to 25%, I think is not too bad for 10 months. Yeah.
You cut it. If you pass it back to this thing.
It's someone
to scream,
shout.
yeah.
More about consumers and how you guys know who your people are, like users are. So we use technology and they're quite old and they're not digitally like comfortable. So deal with those sort of people, are you gonna bring those on board?
Yeah, that is probably a bit of a prioritization question. So yeah, there'll always be some segment of people, and actually I've met quite a lot of
young people in their 20s who say they won't go full Monzo because we don't have a branch that they could go talk to when something goes wrong. And I generally say, look what happened to TSB. I think like what we said earlier, like there's hardly any product that fits 100% of the world. So we kind of have to focus on the customers that we think, I think our core focus is always to kind of change the banking industry and to make things fairer for customers and easier for customers to use. So a lot of our customers do tend to be in their 20s, 30s, sort of students to young professionals. And then the older cohort, you do need a smartphone to use the app. So if you don't have a smartphone, then that means, you're not able to use it, unfortunately. But I think it just comes down to each customer will have their own preference. And if you really like going down Main Street and talking to somebody and having that sort of person-to-person in-branch interaction, then there is another bank that will give that to you. And unfortunately, that's probably not a route that we'll chase. Yeah.
I'd say for another sort of cohort of users that wouldn't necessarily be defined as users by a traditional bank, so people like homeless people, Monzo has a huge social mission, and we're also trying to do a lot to help those that aren't digitally enabled or don't have access to even a normal branch account. And I think we'll actually learn a lot from working with those types of people as well. So there's probably two elements to that question. It's behind you.
Oh. How did you guys have an order in place on when you were attacking the needle swing on the CUE in terms of what you'd go after first, or was it kind of all simultaneous? So is it attacking the operational cost first and trying to drive that down, then looking at revenue spend on each, or was it kind of done at the same time?
Yeah, so essentially, yes, we did have to prioritize. So there's a couple of things that are internal and pretty much 100% in our control. So something like customer operations costs. So we have a customer services team, and about a year ago, we also started what we call the scalers team. And literally their 100% day-to-day focus is to help customer operations scale up. So there's been a few blog posts about that as well. So looking at reductivity, like how do we improve our help screens and use sort of machine learning and machine learning essentially, so that when you type a question into your app, a suggested page comes up, and if that doesn't answer, then obviously you've got a person that you can talk to after that. So by working on those kind of initiatives, it's all 100% within our control, like our ability to sort of manage the customer operations costs. Other things we do is just like negotiate. So where something's an external fee, you kind of, for better or worse, Monzo is at a place where we are pretty high profile now. So we kind of have a bit more bargaining power with lots of suppliers. And then the other component you asked about, the revenue. So there's a couple of things, like we talked about the MasterCard, like the interchange, which is sort of like the commissions when you spend. We have no say in that. It's actually a regulated price that is offered. But the other things we can do are chasing like the primary account usage, because that then leads to people using their cards more, placing their deposits with us, which means if we've got more deposits, we have more cash on our balance sheet, and we have more flexibility what we do then. Yeah.
Cool. Just in terms of, I was wondering if, so Monzo is kind of growing, and it's now, I think, plus $1 billion as kind of market capitalization. I was wondering, is there a stage, does Monzo have like ambitions that it's going to stay independent in the long run, or suppose like someone like an Amazon or Facebook came along and said, oh, we'd like to buy, would Monzo be interested in that? If so, why not?
So I think it's highly unlikely that would happen. I think we're 4 years old, less than 4 years old. And I think a lot of the founders and the management, just all the employees of the company, are quite ambitious. And I think one of the amazing things about Monzo is like people really feel engaged with the company. We're personally invested, emotionally invested in this, I guess. So I'm not sure that selling out will be one of the answers, at least not in the short term. Yeah. Oh, sorry. It was just asking if we would essentially sell ourselves to Facebook or Amazon.
And I think probably the underlying question there was, would we ever IPO? So that is obviously something that brings a lot of benefits, obviously to a lot of our investors, and a few of you Crowdkeep investors, but it also brings a lot of drawbacks, which is something that actually as a company with a social mission as strong as we do, you really have to consider. So it might be in 4 or 5 years' time that that is the right thing for us to do. At the moment, that's far too long a way to think about. A 5-year business plan, as Julie will tell you, in Monzo, is very, very hard to predict. But as far as selling out, yeah, I don't think we'd ever do that.
Hi there. Yeah. Any plans to expand into Spain and Portugal area?
Spain, Portugal specifically. I don't think there's a business strategy for Spain and Portugal specifically. There is the ambition to expand globally, yes, of course. Doing that whilst we are not profitable is not a good idea. We need to make sure that we have a sustainable product that works in the UK, and then we can look at expanding abroad.
I hope.
We actually used to sit in one of the offices at WeWork before we moved into this space because our offices were too small. We love WeWork. Who's next? 2 more questions. Stick the hands up.
I was wondering if you users' accounts, if you plan on utilizing being able to generate income from that data, either selling it as metadata
like
or
selling it?
Yeah.
No.
Metadata from the data, that might be an option. Has that been considered?
I don't know if that's actually been considered. I would say that any data that we sell would be strongly adversely looked upon within Monzo. We'll try and make it work for us. At the moment, I think, quite often we struggle to do that. And that's something that, drives a lot of our products and a lot of our, what makes Monzo different. So, yeah, I think we'd keep it internal for now.
Yeah, I think there's just, I think most people know about GDPR and compliance and so forth. So, yeah, just I think unlikely. It's just a little bit against, I think, the way, the ethos of the company at the moment. Yeah. And I think there's one more question. Yeah, so out of all the current account customers we have, it's about 25% primary users.
What? For Monzo?
For Monzo staff.
Is it 100%?
100%, of course. GDPR compliance issues, can't say. And is that cool? I think that's it for public questions, but I think we're going to be hanging around a little bit, so yeah, feel free to come chat. And thank you everybody for coming.
Pretty much. Pretty much.